Most people think getting rich is about luck, connections, or a secret formula only the wealthy know. That's a lie, and I'm here to set the record straight. I've been diving into the world of personal finance, and believe it or not, it all comes down to making conscious decisions and following a few key principles. Today, we're digging deep into a book that will change how you think about money and your future. Welcome to 10x Wiser. 10x Wiser delivers transformative insights, empowering you to solve challenges and become your best self. If you're ready to take control of your finances and unlock the path to a rich life, hit that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more game-changing ideas. And now, welcome our host and guest for today's podcast, Tony and Harper.
Welcome to our deep dive into I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi. We've got your notes and highlights ready to go so we can pull out some of the most impactful advice from this one stuff that you can actually use. Get ready for some maybe counterintuitive ideas like spending extravagantly on the things you love and why ignoring most money advice could actually be a good thing and why saving alone just won't cut it.
What's really cool about this book is how Sethi ties the psychology of our daily choices to our financial habits. He makes this great comparison between how we approach money with, you're not going to believe this food.
All right, I'm listening.
How so? Well, just think about it. We often avoid tracking what we eat, maybe overindulge a bit, and end up trusting advice that might not actually be good for us. And we kind of do the same thing with our money, right?
That's true. I'm definitely guilty of that myself sometimes. So how do we break free from these bad money habits?
Sethi calls these subconscious beliefs that we have invisible money scripts. And they can really mess with our financial goals. Like, imagine growing up hearing everyone has credit card debt. You might just unconsciously accept overspending as normal.
So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy almost. How do we go about rewriting those scripts?
Sethi's answer is something he calls conscious spending. It's not about just depriving yourself. It's more about being intentional with your money. He has this story about a friend who spends, get this, $21,000 a year just on going out.
Whoa, that's a lot. But they're not in debt.
Not at all, because it's a conscious choice.
All
he
right.
loves going out, being social. It aligns with his values, and he's got it budgeted for Sethi's conscious spend plan. Basically splits your income into 4 categories: fixed costs, investment savings, and then guilt-free spending money.
That last one sounds like my kind of category.
Right. It's where you can enjoy life without the guilt. He suggests starting with a split, like 601, 010, 20, but the key is to really tweak those percentages based on what your own goals and values are. So if travel is your priority, maybe you bump up that guilt-free spending money.
I like where this is going. So we're spending consciously, but what about those little plastic devils? Credit cards.
This is where Sethi really challenges conventional wisdom. He focuses on how powerful credit cards can be when you use them strategically. Think about it. A good credit score can save you literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest on a 30-year mortgage.
Okay, I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, myself included, are kind of afraid of getting into debt.
And Sethi gets that. He gives very specific advice to avoid that. He even includes a word-for-word script for negotiating away those annoying credit card fees.
And people actually have success using that.
It's surprisingly effective. And he has this other really clever tactic, requesting credit limit increases. This can actually improve your credit utilization rate, which is a big factor in your credit score.
So it's not just about paying your bills on time, but also understanding the system.
Exactly. Sethi even has a system for getting the most out of your credit card rewards. He tells this funny story about how he used his hotel rewards to, well, I don't want to spoil it, but let's just say it involves a presidential suite.
Okay, now I have to hear this story, but before you tell it, what about those of us who maybe already have some credit card debt?
Sethi has strategies for that too. He focuses on those invisible money scripts we talked about earlier. Sometimes just being aware of the beliefs that are holding you back can make a big difference.
So step 1 is mental before you even look at your budget.
Absolutely. And then he suggests some practical things, like just paying a little bit more than the minimum payment each month. Small changes can have a big impact.
Okay, so we're spending consciously, mastering credit cards. What's next in our rich life journey?
Well, let's talk about banks. Sethi really gets fired up about how some of those big banks can be so predatory with all their hidden fees and confusing marketing tactics.
Yeah, it can feel like they're designed to trap you. So what's the solution, switching banks?
That's exactly Sethi's big win advice. He found that most people will actually stick with banks that they don't even like, even when they're getting ripped off.
I can see that switching banks just seems like such a hassle.
But Sethi makes it really simple. He gives you the criteria to look for in a good bank, focusing more on things like trust and features instead of chasing those high interest rates.
So don't be a rate chaser, as he calls them.
Right. He'd rather you have an interest rate that's maybe a little bit lower, but with a bank that shares your values and treats you fairly.
Makes sense. Once you've found the perfect bank, are there any other ways to optimize your accounts?
Sethi gives you a script for negotiating away bank fees, stressing that you need to be persistent and know your leverage. He also recommends setting up a no-fee, no-minimum checking account to keep things simple.
All about taking back control.
Exactly. And the best part is once it's all set up, it mostly runs itself so you can focus on other things, like investing.
That's the perfect transition.
Oh,
Let's talk about investing.
Now, this is where Sethi really throws down a challenge. He debunks this myth of the all-knowing investment expert. He thinks that a lot of people would be better off managing their own money.
That's a bold statement. What makes him say that?
Well, he shows how a lot of fund managers don't even beat the market, and they charge high fees that just eat away at your returns. He even shares his own story about firing his financial advisor and taking control of his own investments.
Okay, I'm starting to see why DIY investing might be appealing, but where do you even begin?
Sethi believes in a long-term automated approach to avoid making emotional decisions. He's a huge fan of target date funds as an easy and effective place to start. They basically adjust your investments based on your age and when you plan to retire.
Target date funds, I've heard that term, but could you maybe break it down a bit more?
Sure, think of them like a diversified portfolio of different things, like stocks, bonds, all that stuff that's professionally managed. As you get closer to retirement, the fund automatically becomes more conservative to protect your nest egg.
So you can kind of just set it and forget it.
Pretty much. It takes all the guesswork out of investing and helps you stay focused for the long haul.
Sounds good to me. What about other investment options? Does he talk about those too?
He mentions index funds, which are another low-cost diversified option. And he talks about real estate, but here's the thing. He makes this point that your primary residence might not be a good investment.
That's interesting. Why does he think that?
He says that the returns on real estate are often exaggerated when you consider the extra costs like property taxes and maintenance and the fact that your money is tied up.
So sometimes renting might actually be a better choice, especially if you value being flexible.
Exactly. He wants you to challenge those traditional ideas and make choices that fit your own goals and how you want to live.
Speaking of challenging traditional ideas, what about riskier investments like cryptocurrency? How does he feel about those?
He's definitely cautious. He sees them more as fun money, where you understand that you could lose everything. He even shares a story about how he lost money on some tech stocks when he was first starting out.
So be realistic about risk and don't get caught up in the hype.
Right. Diversification is key. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, especially with high-risk stuff.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. Conscious spending, credit cards, banks, and even investing. But there's another big piece to this. Rich life, relationships, and money. That's where things can get really tricky.
You're right. Money can be a big source of conflict in relationships, whether it's with a partner, family, or friends.
So what's his advice on navigating those tough conversations?
He stresses open and honest communication with your partner about everything from your financial goals to your spending habits. He even talks about his experience negotiating a prenup with his wife.
Wow, that's putting yourself out there. Sounds like it's about being on the same page financially and working as a team.
Exactly. He encourages couples to have regular money dates to talk about finances, set goals, and make sure they're both moving in the same direction.
Those money dates sound like a great idea. But what about those awkward money conversations you might have with family or friends?
Sethi has advice for that too. He says it's important to set boundaries, be clear about your expectations, and know when to say no. He believes that being honest and direct about money can actually make your relationships stronger in the long run.
That's a good point. It's all about communication and respect. But before we dive too deep into relationships, let's take a quick break and come back refreshed for part 2.
You know, one of the best things I got from I Will Teach You to Be Rich is this idea of automation. Sethi calls it automatic money flow, where you basically set up systems to manage your money for you.
It's like having a personal finance robot in the background. I love it. But how does that work in real life?
Sethi gives you a clear plan. It starts with having the right bank accounts. He recommends a no-fee, no-minimum checking account for your everyday spending, a high-yield savings account for things like your emergency fund and short-term goals. And then, of course, your investment accounts like a 401k or a Roth IRA.
Okay, that makes sense. So once you have those accounts set up, what's next?
That's when the fun starts. You got to link those accounts and set up automatic transfers. This is where that conscious spending plan we talked about comes in.
So like if I've allocated 10% for investments and 5% for savings, those percentages would automatically get transferred from my checking account on payday.
You got it. It's like building this system where part of your paycheck goes straight to your savings and investments before you even have a chance to spend it. The money that's left in your checking account is for your fixed costs and that guilt-free spending.
It's like paying yourself first, but on autopilot.
Exactly. And don't forget about setting up automatic bill payments, too. That way you never miss a due date. Sethi even recommends trying to negotiate with those companies to change your bill due dates at the beginning of the month. That way everything lines up with your automatic money flow.
Oh, that's a good tip. So
Yeah.
once you've got this automatic money flow going, you can just sit back and relax.
Well, not completely. You should check in on your system every now and then. Maybe start with weekly check-ins when you're first getting started. Then once you get more comfortable and your spending habits are more predictable, you can switch to monthly reviews.
Finding a balance between automation and staying aware.
Right. The whole point is that the system should free up your time and energy, not make you more stressed.
Makes sense. So automatic money flow helps us manage our everyday money. But what about those bigger financial decisions like buying a house or a car? Those can feel really scary.
Seppi's got you covered. He has whole chapters dedicated to these big purchases. He gives you a practical way to think about them strategically.
Let's start with cars. That's a purchase that can really get people in trouble if they're not careful.
Definitely. Sethi recommends a rational approach to buying a car. Don't let emotions take over. The first step is figuring out your budget. And he says it's not just about what you can technically afford, but what you're actually comfortable spending without messing up your other financial goals.
So setting boundaries and avoiding lifestyle creep.
Exactly. Once you've got a realistic budget in mind, you can start researching cars that fit your needs and your price range. He says to prioritize reliability over those fancy features and to really consider buying a used car to save some money.
Sounds like good advice. But what about negotiating with car dealerships? That can be intimidating.
Sethi gives you a step-by-step plan for negotiating with tips on how to get the best price. He even suggests using online resources like Fighting Chance, which gives you insider info on dealer costs and negotiating tactics.
Arm yourself with knowledge.
Exactly. Now let's talk about another big purchase, housing. This one can be really emotional for a lot of people.
Yeah, owning a home is often seen as the ultimate financial goal, the American dream and all that. But Sethi actually has a different take on home ownership. It's a little controversial.
He does. He argues that buying a house might not always be the best financial move, especially when you consider all those extra costs like property taxes and maintenance and the fact that your money is tied up.
So he's not against buying a house,
Right.
but it shouldn't be an automatic decision.
Right. You have to weigh the pros and cons and make a smart choice based on your own situation and goals.
Let's say someone's decided that buying a house is right for them. Does Sethi offer any guidance on how to approach that?
Oh, yeah. He breaks down the process of saving for a down payment, getting pre-approved for a mortgage, and even negotiating with sellers. He's a big believer in having a 20% down payment so you can avoid PMI and really understanding all the costs before you jump in.
It's about being realistic and not ending up house poor, as they say.
Exactly. So we've covered a lot of practical stuff here, from conscious spending and credit cards to banks investing cars and even housing. But Sethi doesn't stop there. He also gets into those more personal aspects of money, like how it affects our relationships.
That's a big one. Money can cause a lot of tension in relationships, whether it's with a partner, family, or friends.
You're right. And Sethi really encourages open and honest communication about money in all your relationships. He even shares his own experience about negotiating a prenup with his wife.
That's pretty brave. It shows how important he thinks these conversations are.
Absolutely. He gives you a framework for having these tough conversations in a kind and clear way.
So it's not just about having the conversation, but having it the right way.
Exactly. He wants you to approach these talks with empathy and understanding. Focus on your shared goals and find solutions that work for everyone involved.
This is about building trust and strengthening relationships through honest communication about money.
You got it. And it's not just about romantic relationships. Sethi also talks about navigating money conversations with your family and friends. He talks about setting boundaries, being clear about what you expect, and knowing when to say no.
Those can be some of the hardest conversations to have.
They can. But Sethi thinks that being upfront about your financial values and priorities can actually prevent misunderstandings and make your relationship stronger in the long run.
Makes sense. So we've covered a lot of ground, from practical tips to relationship advice. But I think it's important to remember Sethi's overall message, the why behind all this financial stuff.
You're right. I will teach you to be rich is about so much more than just the numbers. It's about using money as a tool to build a life you love.
It's about making your money match your values and creating a rich life that shows what really matters to you, your own definition of success and happiness.
Sethi wants us to remember that money is just a tool. It's not the goal itself. The real goal is to create a life that's full of purpose, meaning, and joy.
I really like that idea. But before we get too philosophical, I think we need to dive a little deeper into this rich life concept. Let's take another quick break and then come back for our final segment, where we'll explore how Sethi's ideas can help you build a life full of abundance. Okay, we're back and ready to dig into this rich life idea that Sethi talks about. It's more than just having a ton of money, right?
Yeah, definitely. Sethi wants you to think about what a rich life means to you personally. Like, what does that look like? It could be using your financial freedom to follow your passions, spend time with people you love, travel, or maybe give back to your community.
It's about making your money work for what you believe in and creating a life that shows that a life that reflects what's important to you.
Yeah, that's it. And he really emphasizes that building this rich life is a journey. It's not like you just arrive somewhere. It's more about those everyday choices you make to create a life that feels rich and fulfilling, both financially and personally.
You know, this reminds me of something we talked about earlier, the idea of giving back. Sethi seems to think that giving back is a big part of living a rich life.
He does, and he says you don't have to be rich to make a difference. Even small donations or volunteering your time can have a big impact. He talks about some cool organizations like Pencils of Promise, which build schools in developing countries, and Kiva, which gives microloans to people starting businesses around the world.
I thought it was awesome how the I Will Teach You to Be Rich community came together and raised over $300,000 for Pencils of Promise. It just shows the power of people working together, even in small ways.
It's really inspiring to see people using what they have to make things better. And it all comes back to that idea of using your money for what you care about.
It's about realizing that money can be a force for good, not just for personal stuff.
Exactly. And I think that's a powerful message to leave people with. I will teach you to be rich. Isn't just about getting more money. It's about using that money to create a life that has meaning. It's about building a rich life, not just for yourself, but for everyone around you.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into I Will Teach You to Be Rich, I want to leave our listeners with one last thought. Sethi is all about taking action. So what's one little thing you can do today to start building your own rich life? Maybe it's setting up a budget, automating your savings, or even having an honest talk with your partner about your financial goals. Whatever it is, take that first step and keep going.
Remember, even small steps done consistently can add up to big results over time.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into I Will Teach You to Be Rich. We hope you found it helpful, inspiring, and most of all, useful. See you next time, and happy investing.
That's it for this week's episode. Today's key takeaway is that you have the power to design your own rich life through conscious planning and automation. I want to thank Tony for sharing his insightful analysis of the financial world and Harper for sharing success stories and practical applications from this book. I hope you've gotten something valuable today. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave a comment below telling us the one thing you're going to change after listening to this episode. Your engagement is what helps us reach more people and make a bigger impact. If you want to dive deeper into the concepts we talked about today, grab a copy of the book on Amazon. The link's in the description. Thanks for joining us, and remember, your rich life is waiting for you to create it.